All right, let's dive into something that can literally make or break a team's success. We're talking about feedback, both giving it and, just as importantly, receiving it. This is the real engine of growth, so let's figure out how to get it right. I mean, this is the million-dollar question, right? It doesn't matter if you're leading a huge company, coaching a sports team, or even just working on a small creative project. Getting everyone in sync, firing on all cylinders, that's the dream. But how do we actually make that happen?
Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we're going to talk about the single most powerful tool for unlocking all that potential. Then, we'll dive into the art of actually giving good feedback. After that, we'll flip the script and look at the other side, how to receive it. And finally, we'll see how all of this connects to another huge piece of the puzzle, smart delegation. All right, let's jump into our first section and start with the absolute foundation. What's the one thing, the one single thing, that can truly change how a team works for the better?
And the answer is feedback. Simple, right? Well, maybe not. Because I'm willing to bet that what most of us think of as feedback isn't really what it's supposed to be. It's a word we throw around all the time, but its real power is so often missed. So let's try to get this right. We're digging into the first half of the equation now, the art of giving feedback in a way that actually works.
But hold on. Before we can get good at giving it, we have to really understand it. So let's just ask a super simple question. What is feedback, really, at its core? Just take a second. What's the first definition that pops into your head? See, most of us immediately fall into a trap. We think feedback is about pointing a finger, telling someone the right answer, or just listing out all their mistakes. But that's a huge misunderstanding. Real, effective feedback is something else entirely. It's much more about collaboration, reflection, and understanding.
And this brings us to the real heart of it. True feedback isn't about you giving all the answers. It's about asking the right questions. It's really an art form, the art of getting someone else to stop and reflect on their own choices and actions. See, that builds genuine awareness and skill, which is so much more powerful than just correcting one little mistake.
Okay, so if that's what it is, the next big question is, when do we use this thing? Is it just for those awkward annual reviews? Or, only when something has gone completely off the rails?
No, the best time for feedback is when it's most useful, when it's actionable, which means right in the middle of the action. Think of it like a course correction tool you use during a project, not just when it's all over. And it is absolutely 100% essential when you delegate a task to someone.
When you boil it all down, it really comes back to this one mindset shift. Good feedback is never a lecture. It's not a monologue from on high. It's the start of a conversation, a real dialogue where you're both working together to find a better way to move forward.
All right, so let's move on. Let's talk about the other side of that conversation. Because giving feedback, that's only half the story. Being able to receive it well, that's just as important.
So, we spent some time talking about the person on the left, the one starting the conversation. Now let's completely shift our focus over to the person on the right. Because let's be honest, being on the receiving end can be really tough, even when the feedback is delivered perfectly. So let's get real for a second. Why is receiving feedback so hard sometimes? I mean, our ego gets bruised, we might feel super defensive, or maybe we just flat out don't trust the person giving it. Just recognizing that these challenges exist is the very first step to getting better at it. To really get the most out of any feedback, you have to go in with the right mindset. And that means, first, listening to actually understand, not just waiting for your turn to talk back. It means asking questions to get totally clear on what they mean. And maybe most importantly, it means trying to separate the message from the messenger and looking for that kernel of truth, even if it's a little hard to hear. Okay, on to our final section. This is where we're going to connect everything we've just talked about, all this stuff about feedback, to another huge leadership skill, delegation. And let's be crystal clear about this. If you just hand off a task to someone and then walk away, you haven't actually delegated anything. You've just dumped work on them. These two things, delegation and feedback, are totally intertwined. You can't have one without the other. And to see exactly what happens when that link is broken, let's look at a quick cautionary tale. It's about a manager named George Watson, and his story is the perfect example of what not to do. So if you look at this table, you can see the really subtle but super important shift in George's job when he got promoted. He went from writing reports to reading them,
from attending meetings to holding them. His entire job changed from doing the work himself to overseeing the work of other people.
And here it is, the diagnosis of the whole problem. George got pretty good at the first part. He was great at handing out tasks, but he completely missed the second, way more important part. By never giving feedback, he basically created this endless cycle of problems, which made everyone's job, including his own, a whole lot harder.
So the big lesson from George's story is this: the higher you climb, the more responsibility you get, the more absolutely essential feedback becomes. It's the only way to make sure that the work you delegate gets done right, and, just as importantly, that your team is actually learning and growing.
Okay, so let's wrap this all up with the key takeaways. First, change your whole approach to feedback. It's not about giving instructions, it's about encouraging reflection. Second, remember that mastering feedback means you have to get good at both giving and receiving it. And finally, effective delegation is pretty much impossible without a consistent, reliable feedback loop. So I'll leave you with one final question to think about. Based on everything we've just covered, what's one piece of feedback you could either give or maybe even ask for this week that would genuinely help your team? What's one conversation you could start that would get your team just one step closer to performing at its absolute best? Thanks for tuning in.